The writer of Ecclesiastes writes a passage that many of us are familiar with. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. And he goes on to talk about a time to keep and a time to throw away. The writer of Ecclesiastes recognizes that things change. And because things change, we can't keep holding on to what was just because that's what we're comfortable with. For example, this office early on would not have been called an office. It would have been called the pastor's study. The idea was that the pastor needed a place with his books to where the pastor could prepare for the lessons that he would teach. And it was all he back then. Thankfully, that's changed. The pastor's job was to reflect and bring forth words of wisdom. This office reflects a significant change that actually occurred in the late 50s, early 60s, with what I call the professionalizing of the ministry, so that people wanted to come to a pastor for not just spiritual words of wisdom, but for counsel. The pastor's office became a center for planning, strategic thinking, implementation of new ideas and new programs. And now the world has changed yet again. What used to be a part of the church is no longer true. We used to count on the fact that young people would be baptized, educated, confirmed, eventually married in the church, and then they would go their way and, with the birth of a child, come back. But they haven't been coming back. And we in the church need to change in order to attract and welcome them back. Have you seen changes in the church? I have. Change in my study. Frankly, the books I have in my office today are about 1/10 of what I used to have. We've seen changes in worship. Never would have occurred to any of us 30 years ago that we could have a worshipful sanctuary with a big screen in the front of it. Things have changed. Some things have changed for the good, some maybe not. But change is inevitable. And like the writer of Ecclesiastes, our God calls us to a ministry that doesn't simply recognize change, but implements responses to change so that people will be cared about. In the first chapter of Reviving the Congregation, I talk about change, and one of the most intriguing aspects of change is the collision between what I call old world habits and new world realities. The expectations of ministry have changed, not only in the pastor's heart and mind, but in the congregation. Never would have occurred to me 10 years ago that the satisfaction level of a congregation goes up as the pastor shifts from providing pastoral care to providing leadership and vision. And yet, the studies are clear. How have your expectations changed? How do they align with a growing ministry like St. Mark? I hope you find the reading helpful and challenging. God bless you.